Aliens may be a serious problem on our southern border and on the northern border. But what about the aliens who may be crossing another border? Oh yes, the border above. That's right, we're talking about outer space, aliens, extraterrestrials, LaToya Jackson, you know, they're here, they're among us. More and more people believe that space aliens may be coming. Now, listen to this story, because this is an actual news story. This isn't like out of the Weekly World News. Chicago O'Hare's airport recently, the United Airlines employees claim they observed a flying saucer-like object hovering low over the terminal for several minutes before bolting through the thick clouds with such ferocity that it actually left like a creepy hole in the cloudy skies overhead. So what was it? A hoax? An alien attack? Were they observing us? Is this a military operation? What is it? Joining us now is UFO historian Richard Dolan and the guy who actually broke the story. His name is John Hilkovich. He is from Chicago, and the Chicago Tribune. John, let me start with you. The UFO witnesses in Chicago, they're not nuts, are they? They are like really fine, upstanding people.
And they're very serious about this. They're all United Airlines employees, ranging from pilots to supervisors who heard chatter about this on the radio and raced out and saw it in the sky, aircraft mechanics, veterans of O'Hare who've been there for a long time, know how the lights can play tricks in the sky, and they say this wasn't that. This was a real metallic gray object low in the sky, and they want answers.
Okay, do you believe them? Do you believe them that they believe it, or do you believe that they really saw what they think they saw?
I believe that what they're reporting and is real, and they were concerned about safety. They're not necessarily saying that this is a craft from another galaxy, sure, but they're saying this is a unidentified flying object low in the sky over the world's second busiest airport. It could pose a collision risk. Who knows, a security risk in this era post 9/11.
Okay, well,
and
No, let me go to Richard here. I'm sorry to interrupt, but let me go to Richard for just a second and ask you, because isn't this the same kind of thing that when we had the new stealth fighters out, everybody was saying, it's an alien spacecraft. No, it's just a secret military aircraft that we hadn't announced for years in advance. Is there a possibility that you think that this is just some sort of military aircraft that we haven't released, that we have?
Sure, anything's possible, Glenn, but if you want to go that route, then I think what you need to do, to be honest about it, is go back through the decades and indeed generations of reports that we've collected of these types of objects that people have been seeing. And let me just add that this is a phenomenon that not simply civilian people have been dealing with, but U.S. military personnel have been encountering what appear to be UFOs. I don't know what else you would call them, objects that military pilots have frequently said are disc-shaped, that look exotic, that behave in unusual ways, and that have violated sensitive airspace time and again for many, many years. So if this is a secret covert project, as many people have speculated, it seems to be going on in a rather confrontational, provocative way. And that really doesn't have any explanation.
All right. So, John, you think that this is, there was some sort of a cover-up. At least the FAA was not real honest with you when you first asked, right?
Well, yeah, I went to the FAA and they said they have no reports of this at all. I put them a Freedom of Information Act request, and then they got back to me several days later saying that in reviewing the communication tapes at O'Hare, they did come across chatter involving this object, and that a United supervisor contacted the FAA manager in the tower and asked if the controllers had seen anything unusual. Also, United Airlines told me that they had no reports of this, even though the fact is that they were interviewing up to a dozen employees who reported observing this, asking them to write reports, draw pictures. After my story broke on Monday, United said, well, yes, we have been talking to these employees.
Okay, so Richard, why would United, why would give me an explanation of why these guys would be hiding this stuff?
Well, I mean, one reason just might be that they're embarrassed to come out and say that, oh yeah, you know, we've got this UFO hanging out over O'Hare and we don't know what to do about it. Let's face it, if you're running a large corporation or a bureaucracy, the last thing you want to do is stick your neck out on an issue like this. And so it doesn't surprise me at all. And in fact, this is, again, part of a long history. FAA as well has not always been forthcoming over many alleged cases. Witnesses have seen these very bizarre things for years and years, and it's very tough to get a straight answer out of a lot of government agencies or other corporate bodies.
All right, but then John, let me go back to you and ask, I mean, geez, I saw Saddam Hussein hung with a cell phone camera. How come there's no pictures? Are there pictures? Is there video? Is there anything? Here it is over Chicago and O'Hare Airport. How come we don't see any visuals?
Well, pictures haven't emerged yet, but I'm told that the flight crew that was being pushed back, one of the pilots did open the windscreen, look out, did identify this object, and he had a digital camera. He may have taken some pictures. We're also hearing other reports that there may be photographs from camera phones and such, that United Airlines may be aware of this, and I'm working, believe me, to find these witnesses.
Okay, if anybody has information on those witnesses, how do they get a hold of you? Jay Hilkovich at ChicagoTribune.com. Yeah, I mean, if you got pictures, man, send them in, because I'd like to see them too. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah,
appreciate it. Now, let's check in with Nancy.
Possible motive in the brutal killing is tied to a Las Vegas strip club.
He's the Las Vegas man who claims he can summon UFOs on command. Pretty wild. So we sent Action News reporter Mike Delastrito to get the real story. But what he found shocked everyone and could leave you wondering, are UFOs real?
Breaking news, solving problems. This is Channel 13 Action News, live at 11.
Well, let's take another trip back into the realm of paranormal tonight. Last night we had ghost hunters, now UFOs.
That's right, and there is a Las Vegas guy making an extraordinary claim about extraterrestrials. So we sent Action News reporter Mike Delastrito to check it out. Mike?
All right, guys, just listen up here. This guy says the Old Testament, written in Hebrew, taught him how to summon UFOs. All right, he says he can also do this on command, and he adds he's been doing it for 25 years, keeping all of it secret until now.
These beings are here. They're here. They're just sitting right up there.
We met up with Prophet Yahweh, seer of Yahweh, at Doolittle Park off Lake Mead. We picked the day, we picked the time, and we picked the location.
Everyone's going to think you're absolutely nuts.
Well, I thought I was absolutely nuts.
Until he says he saw UFOs. Over the years, 1,500 of them.
Can we make it 1,501 today? What do you think?
I'll try it.
He says the voice in his head told him to go public now. So we took him up on his offer, and we scanned the skies. Nothing but a few clouds. When the prophet started praying for a sighting, I wasn't exactly convinced.
I pray, oh Yahweh, that you send a sighting so that they know that I am not mentally ill. I am not a false prophet, like those who seek to kill me say I am.
I see something straight up.
Oh, brother, look at it. There it is.
You can barely see it, a white speck. Then another sighting.
There it is. I got it. I got it. I got it. I got it.
Photojournalist Jonathan Hawkins locks in on it. Let's take a closer look here. It's an orange sphere that appeared out of nowhere. I call the boss with an unexpected change in my story.
I can see it clear as day. In fact, it's bright.
I can't believe this.
It's moving pretty fast.
It's going to Nellis Air Force Base. It wants to be seen.
We called Nellis to see what these things might be. Guess what? They didn't call us back. But this thing started coming back toward us.
It's coming toward us now, I think.
What?
See, it's coming up toward us.
Whoa, man! Oh, hallelujah!
Then, a few seconds later, it disappeared.
It's going back up in space.
Prophet Yahweh isn't concerned. He says it'll be back.
And I'm still not quite sure what those things were. Now, if I didn't see this for myself, I probably would have just laughed this whole thing off. Prophet Yahweh says, though, this is just the beginning. He says we're going to see a lot more of these things starting next week. And he says one will come down low enough for all of Las Vegas to see. Mike Dell'Ostrito, Channel 13 Action News.
Interesting. You know what? If anybody knows what that was, please call Mike Dell'Ostrito and identify that object.
So, Jerry, do you mind if we play the X-Files theme song while you do what?
Yeah, really.
I think I can handle it.
Yeah.
No comment on that. Let's, from a scientific point of view, let's go right to early warning desert Doppler. And, you know, that's not the best for picking up UFOs, but I'll tell you, it's pretty good for thunderstorms, all kinds of wacky convective activities.
Have UFOs shut down our government's defense systems? There is evidence that something caused missiles to malfunction during test launches. Former Air Force officers tell their incredible story about the film that was confiscated by the CIA. What was on it? And why don't officials want us to see it? Find out right now on Larry King Live. Good evening. We begin with shocking allegations that UFOs have interfered with missiles at U.S. Air Force bases, and aliens are monitoring nuclear warheads and bombs. Our first guests claim UFOs have activated missile systems at 5 Air Force bases in 5 different states. They also claim a cover-up, that the United States government is keeping the information secret. Former Air Force officers and an investigator are here with their stories. Here in Los Angeles is Robert Hastings. He's author of UFOs and Nukes. I have the book right here. The book is available at ufohastings.com. He has been investigating sightings at weapon sites for years. Bob Salas is a former captain, U.S. Air Force Base. At the U.S. Air Force, he was at Malmstrom Air Force Base in 1967, where there were claims a UFO caused missiles to malfunction. He's co-author of Fated Giant. Bob Jameson is with us, former U.S. Air Force officer. He was at Malmstrom as well in 1967, and he says his superiors told him UFOs caused the malfunctions. And in Peoria, Illinois, is Dr. Bob Jacobs, former First Lieutenant U.S. Air Force, former U.S. Air Force photographic instrumentation officer. A UFO showed up on film that he shot in 1964 at Vandenberg Air Force Base, and that was later confiscated by CIA agents. All of our guests are named Bob. So I'm going to call them by their last names. We'll start with Robert Hastings. How did you get, what's your explanation for UFOs at nuclear weapon sites?
I can simply say after 35 years of research that these incidents have taken place. There are hundreds of declassified documents which indicate that UFOs have demonstrated a distinct and ongoing interest in our nuclear weapon sites. I've also interviewed nearly 100 gentlemen who were involved in these incidents at various Air Force bases. This is very widespread. What you're seeing here this evening is the tip of the iceberg.
How do they cause a malfunction? What do they do to cause something to not work?
I think that's probably still an unknown. I know that Boeing engineers attempted to duplicate some of the malfunctions. They did succeed in doing that, but they still can't determine what initially caused them. Bob Salas could address that.
Bob, what happened at Malmstrom in 1967?
1967, I was on duty as a missile launch officer. I get calls from my guards upstairs. First, I get one call saying that they're seeing strange lights flying in the sky, and I didn't pay too much attention to that. About 5 minutes later, the main security guard, the flight security controller, calls down, says he's looking at a glowing red object, very large, hovering over the front gate. He wants to know what to do. I tell him to secure the facility. We hang up. I go to tell my commanders. So within seconds of that call, my missiles start shutting down. I recall losing all 10 of them.
You didn't see the object?
I didn't see the object because I was obliged to stay underground in the capsule.
By shutting down, we mean what?
By shutting down, what I mean is they were not launchable. They were in a no-go condition, disabled.
How long to restart them?
How long to restart? Well, I'm sure it took over a day, and maybe...
All right. Now, Bob Jameson, you were there too, right?
Yes, sir.
And you were in the Air Force?
Yes, I was in the Air Force.
Where were you when this was happening?
Okay, was a targeting officer, missile targeting officer. I was at home relaxing, and I got a call from Job Control to tell them to come in. A missile had gone down. My job as a targeting officer was to bring him back up. And so I went into...
So you didn't see the incident. You just went to the missile.
I went to the incident. I went to the site.
Where is Maelstrom?
It's Great Falls, Montana, just outside of Great Falls, Montana.
What did you make of the story?
Well, I know that it's true. I went into Job Control after I got to the hangar. I was called in, went to the hangar, went to the Job Control, and I noticed they have a map of the whole complex with green lights where the missiles were good, but there's one small area with 10 red lights. I mean, those missiles were out.
Is it possible they just malfunctioned?
That doesn't happen. Very rarely does a missile malfunction, and I don't think any... Much more rare would be 2 at the same time, but never 10.
Now, Bob Jacobs, where were you? What were you filming, and where were you?
I was officer in charge of optical instrumentation at Vandenberg Air Force Base from 1963 to 66.
That's
our job
California?
was to photograph. That's California, so right there on the coast.
Right.
And our job was to photograph with high-speed instrumentation every missile launch from Vandenberg going down the test range. They wanted to find out if we could figure out a place to put a telescope where we could get a side view of the missile so that we could see all 3 stages of powered flight. So I went up to Big Sur, California, up on a U.S. Forest Service road on Anderson Peak, and I installed a telescopic sight up there. The Air Force flew in a huge catadioptric telescope from the Cape. It was built by Dr. Walter Manning at Boston University. They put the telescope up there, and with that thing, which had a focal length of 2,500 inches, we photographed an Atlas missile raising up out of the fog cover and flying downrange. We got all 3 stages of powered flight, and as the dummy warhead and the package flew on down range, we were all celebrating the fact that we had seen the thing and accomplished the mission. When I got back to the base with the film the next day, I was called into the office of Major Florence J. Mansman. And there were 3 people in gray suits standing in there. There was a 16-millimeter camera and a screen set up. Major Mansman said, "Lieutenant, sit down and watch this." And he turned down the lights, turned on the camera on the projector, and the film came on. And I recognized it as the film that we'd shot at Big Sur the previous day. Toward the end of the flight, I was looking at Major Mansman saying, "Pretty good stuff, huh, sir?" And suddenly he said, "Just watch this." And as I watched, the warhead, the dummy warhead, the chaff that was put out in front of it as the decoy to deflect the Russian anti-missile tracking radar. Everything was flying along, and suddenly, in the same direction this stuff was flying at about 8,000 miles an hour, an object came into the frame, shot a beam of light at the warhead, flew up to the top, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew around the direction it was flying, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew down, shot another beam of light at the warhead, and flew out the same way it came in.
Well, I don't see. Why didn't you see this when you were shooting it?
Well, it was 800 miles away from us.
Oh, I got you. And they confiscated.
Well, first of all, Major Mansman said to me, "What was that? Were you guys screwing around up there?" I said, "No, sir." And he said, "Then tell me what that was." And I said, "We got a UFO." And he said, "Lieutenant, you are never to speak of this again. As far as you're concerned, this didn't happen."
Hold on, guys. I'll be right back. I got to take a break. Okay, that's weird. You think there's a national defense plan for aliens? Sounds crazy. We'll ask about that next.
I'm not alone in witnessing something extraordinary. That's the bottom line.
Powerful beaming spotlights.
Angular in shape, sitting on three legs.
No type of aircraft that I've ever seen
rapidly maneuver and quickly disappear.
Accelerating to very high speed. Majestic triangle craft.
What we were seeing didn't resemble anything known to us.
Bob Jameson will make this clear. You were asked to say nothing?
I was not asked to say nothing. In fact, no one admonished me, and I did not sign an oath saying that
so
I can't say.
There was no cover-up as far as you were concerned?
That's correct.
You just...
I can tell. I can speak about it.
You saw what you saw. Do you think there's a plan for invasion by aliens?
I wouldn't presume to know that. I just simply know that the U.S. government does not obviously appreciate people such as myself and these gentlemen speaking out about this. What we're describing on an ongoing basis, decade after decade, at multiple Air Force bases is disruption of our nuclear missiles.
We have an email from Kyle in Plainville, Massachusetts. Why would UFOs only disable U.S. defense systems and not another country? Is there a lesson to be learned in all this? Or do you think maybe, Bob Salas, they have disabled other countries?
They have. I know that there have been events in the Soviet Union where they have interfered there. They've been seen in just any country you can name, and they do disable communications, especially.
We have an email from Eric in Atlanta, Georgia. What can be done, if anything, to force the U.S. government and or military to declassify and release all it knows about UFOs? Dr. Jacobs, when do you think that would happen? Do you think that would happen?
It would take a revolution in public opinion. The problem with this field is that it's surrounded by so many crackpots and weirdos who make a joke about it, that those of us who take it seriously and think that something is definitely going on that needs to be scientifically investigated are laughed at. The technician here in the studio where I am, I said we were talking about UFOs tonight, and her face lit up and she got that kind of look, which is typical of what happens to us. I think that we need a real scientific committee to be put together to look into these things. I think Robert can talk to this too.
Absolutely.
Bob Salas, you agree?
Yeah, I would like to make a comment real quick. The Air Force has perpetrated a fraud, especially in our case. They claim in their statement about UFOs that no UFO incident has ever affected national security, and we lost 20 missiles during the Cold War. They also stonewalled the Condon Committee at that time. The Condon Committee had heard about our incident and were told to go away. They said they were told that no UFOs were involved. And then the Air Force turns around and uses the Condon Committee as a reason not to further investigate UFOs.
Robert Hastings, in doing all these shows, what confounds me is, if all this is true, what are they afraid of? What's the government afraid of?
Victor Marchetti is a former high-level CIA official. He wrote the book CIA and the Cult of Intelligence in 1975, bestseller. CIA tried to prohibit that being printed. Victor Marchetti in 1979 wrote an article regarding what the CIA thought about UFOs. He alluded to rumors at the agency of crashed UFOs and the recovery of bodies of aliens. More to the point, Victor Marchetti said that in his view as an intelligence analyst, he thinks that the power structures, the elite, the status quo people in every country on earth who are in on the secret are really trying to maintain their own power and status and don't want to rock the boat.
Email from Christian, Brighton, Colorado. When is the Air Force going to stop lying to the people and finally tell them the truth about alien visitation? The American people are paying their salaries, and they are supposed to defend and respect the Constitution of the United States of America. Bob Jameson, do you think we'll ever see it? Do you think we'll ever see an Air Force official, Secretary of the Air Force, come on and say, here's the story?
Perhaps through more programs such as this, we can get the public tuned to the fact that there are UFOs. They're not going to hurt you, I don't think. They haven't hurt anybody that I know of. And I think that perhaps through more programs such as yours and such as these people are bringing out.
And a government investigation.
And
an open investigation.
There's never been one, right?
Right.
Not really, no. I mean, in 1968 was the last congressional hearing on UFOs, 1968.
40 years.
40 years. We need another one. We need a strong one. Hopefully the next administration will do that.
There's been a lot of behind-the-scenes manipulation of Congress by the military liaison personnel.
Because of what? Fear of what?
Well, again, Larry, These gentlemen are talking about nuclear missiles being dropped offline. The Pentagon does not want the Russians or previously the Soviets to know that. It's going on in the Soviet Union, as Bob Salas said, but I have interviewed persons who were involved with Minuteman missile bases in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they say this is continuing to occur. I've actually interviewed a gentleman a year ago who said that his missiles were activated by UFO. And I described that in detail in my book. I asked him to come on this program, and he declined, I think, because he's uneasy about talking publicly.
There are skeptics, not a surprise. Bill Nye, the science guy, is here when Larry King Live returns.
It does not contain any pattern of purpose or of consistency.
It was not a weather balloon, nor an aircraft, nor a missile. It was something else.
I don't know what they saw in 47, but I'm quite sure it probably was Project Mogul.
Nothing we had at the time could fit the description, size, shape.
Go to CNN.com/Larry King right now. Take our quick vote. Is the United States government hiding knowledge of UFOs? Let us know what you think. Joining our panel is Bill Nye, the science guy. He's a scientist, engineer, best-selling author, and Emmy-winning television personality. He's, by the way, a member of the Skeptic Society and a fellow with the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. Now, Bill, assuming that these distinguished gentlemen are not lying, we have 3 former members of the Air Force and Robert Hastings, who's looked into this for a long time. What's your thought?
Well, in the skeptical world, in science, we look at claims. We look at individual claims. So I noticed that we looked at the intro of your show and stuff that there's several UFO incidents all mixed together. But let's talk about the one in 1967, right? This is your problem at Malmstrom Air Force in Montana. So the nuclear missiles went down, right? So if you go look at the documents that these guys have offered, if I understand it, as evidence, you look at some, and you don't have to read it, but you see there's something blacked out, okay? Redacted. That's a guy's home address. They don't want you to publish your home address. Here's one with a whole bunch of people's office phone numbers and stuff, and it looks spooky and scary. Well, it looks spooky and scary. But it turns out that that day, or the day before, the power had gone out in some of the chiller units, the air conditioning, okay? And Boeing was called out. Boeing makes a Minuteman missile because all of these things went down.
So the man who called him and said he saw something outside, he didn't see something.
Let me just say, when you see something, a lot of people see something. And a lot of people see things that are really they can't identify, but that doesn't mean they were, it's quite a leap.
So you're saying it's a coincidence. This guy thought he saw something, and the missiles go off.
And then you talk to people who are there, and it's very compelling. And these documents, just while you address this,
let him respond.
Well, when you respond, address that one of the officers suspected that somebody had been drinking. Okay.
I never heard that.
So
I never heard that
claim
that anybody was drinking. Let me say, first of all, the missile shutdowns had nothing to do with power failure. There is triple redundancy on power. We've got Montana Power, we've got backup generator, we've got batteries. Okay, the power.
You've never seen missiles go down due to a power failure.
Not really, because of all that backup on power. So this had nothing to do with power. Second point, the flight security guard that reported this was about less than 100 feet away from this object. He was looking at it through his window. It was right outside the front gate, right above the gate. It was glowing red object, pulsing. And that.
Okay, did you see it?
No, I couldn't see it. I couldn't leave the capsule. But within seconds after that report, the missile shut down. Now, was that a coincidence?
Well, it's hearsay, as we say.
It's not hearsay.
Well, you're
It's
saying
testimony.
that this guy told you.
Well, you're not saying. I'm not asking you. You don't think he's lying.
No.
All right. So the guy did tell him.
He did tell him, and he saw something. And
The guy saw
coincidentally, the
something.
missile shut down.
Coincidentally, isn't that a weird coincidence?
Yeah, many times I've flipped a light switch and
now, what
you
if
hear
the
a
same,
siren. I mean,
what if the same thing happened a week earlier? Only this time, 10 missiles go down. A lot of security guards see the UFOs right above the
or 5 other missile bases
Okay, so why
on
haven't
repeated
we-
occasions.
Is that a coincidence, too? I mean, you combine the
50s,
two, are
60s,
those two
70s, and
coincidences?
80s.
Well,
It was
but
over
here's the thing,
100
it's not-
people, Bill.
Well, in science, it's
I
not
wish
evidence.
I wish Edgar Mitchell were here, but in any case,
it may not be evidence, let's say, but it is certainly
100
a source
people are telling the same story at different Air Force bases over a 40-year period. These guys were entrusted with weapons of destruction by the U.S. government, and there's 100 now who are coming forward and saying UFOs shut down their nuclear weapons.
Well,
we have mass psychosis
in the
among our
interest of
nuclear
time. In the interest of time, Dr. Jacobs, he takes pictures, he comes back, they call him in, they show him the pictures of
I
this
saw it. I'm an
strange thing.
eyewitness.
He saw it,
I'm not talking about
and they confiscate it.
Yeah.
Why?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Hello?
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
You mind if I speak, Mr. Comedian?
Go ahead.
I was there. I saw the film with my own eyes. I'm not lying. Why would I? I'm a university professor with a PhD and a lot of years of good, respectful research. So the guys from Ulster may not have seen the UFO, but they saw the results of it. I saw the damn thing on film with my own eyes, so don't call me a liar, and you weren't there. I was.
With all due respect, I'm not calling you a liar. It's just quite a step to say there was a film with remarkable images on it that the CIA confiscated.
Which I saw and which they did.
Yeah, which is quite a step from there to say it was definitely a spacecraft from another civilization. That's the leap that the skeptical community is reluctant to take.
Hey, pal, listen to me. I didn't say it was a spaceship from another civilization. I said it was something in the air that we couldn't identify. Therefore, it was an unidentified flying object. It was shaped like two saucers put together with a golf ball on top, and it fired a beam that we assumed was a plasma beam at a dummy warhead and knocked it out of space. Tell me what happened. Tell me who did that. Tell me in 1964 who had that technology, pal. Not us, and not the Russians, and nobody I know of. So come on,
what's
Mr.
your
Skeptic,
conclusion?
what about it?
Well, so what's your conclusion?
What's your conclusion?
What are you saying? My conclusion is that something happened that you don't know what it was, and I wouldn't be surprised if it had something to do with another aspect of military testing in the sky that night. And it's a much more reasonable explanation.
We had nothing. There was nothing in our inventory that could possibly
let's do this other little thought experiment, everybody. Okay, let's say this has been going on since 1967, routinely, right? There's an old joke in broadcasting.
Are you going to do this with baking soda and vinegar, Bill?
Hold on. We're running out of time.
It's an old joke in broadcasting. Well, it's like trying to photograph a car wreck. At one time considered an impossible thing to do. If you send out a news crew, let's go shoot a car wreck, that was a joke. Well, now, routinely on the nightly news, we see car wrecks. We see car wrecks on the freeway. We see car wrecks behind us.
Why was it a joke?
Because there didn't used to be a camera everywhere. There are millions and millions of cameras. There are billions of digital pictures taken every week.
You're not saying there are no UFOs. You're saying that have been proven.
I'm saying that it's quite a step to see something you don't know what it is in the sky, to say that there are alien spacecraft that are monitoring our nuclear weapons.
Dr. Jacobs.
Well, I understand that.
Now, so if you're questioning what he's seen...
No, well, I'm questioning the conclusion that the technology did not exist in 1964 to produce images on film that the CIA would want to confiscate.
if I may.
Well, in 1964, you were trying to figure out what. In 1964, you were trying to figure out what girls were. I was in the service in a scientific capacity.
So, sir, you can attack me.
Get off your skeptic high horse, pal.
Well, it just doesn't.
You're attacking us. You're the one who's making ad hominem attacks and saying that's quite a step. You bet it's quite a step.
If I may.
All right, one at a time, please. We got 2 minutes left.
The other person, the other former Air Force officer, retired Air Force officer involved in it, was charged with photo analysis of this film. Florence Mansman. He's now deceased.
Florence J.
I've spoken
Mansman.
to his widow. I have correspondence, private correspondence between Dr. Jacobs and Dr. Mansman, actually. And 20 years later, they are marveling over what they saw. Mansman's professional assessment at Vandenberg in 1964 was that this was an extraterrestrial craft.
Okay, so he made that conclusion.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
And I can send you, I will give CNN, I'm trying to get the national media involved in this as much as possible. I will send anyone, any correspondent for any newspaper, any radio station, TV station, any scientist, any member of your group, all of the original documentation where these gentlemen are discussing the subject 20 years later.
We're going to do a lot more on this because we do a lot on UFOs. We thank you all for coming, and we thank Dr. Jacobs. And when we come back, we're going to really get into it. A double debate. We're going to have a physicist, a lecturer, a researcher, and a documentary filmmaker go up against Bill Nye and Dr. Seth Shostak into a 2 versus 2 on this whole subject. Don't go away.
Do you think it's possible that it was from another world?
My Air Force training says I can't think that way, okay?
I know what I saw, and I get very upset, and I was wondering why they won't find out what it was.
And until somebody actually sees it, they have no idea. No idea.
A story this big, there's no way it could be kept secret from the public. What do you say to someone like that says that?
Well, somebody's kept it pretty secret for quite a while, haven't they?
4 distinguished gentlemen will now debate this reasonably. They are here in Los Angeles. Stanton Friedman. He's a physicist, lecturer, and UFO researcher and author of Flying Saucers and Science. James Fox is a documentary filmmaker and UFO researcher, the executive producer of Out of the Blue, and finishing up a new film, the working title Beyond the Blue. Bill Nye, our science guy, remains. And in Boston is Dr. Seth Shostak, the senior astronomer for the SETI Institute. That stands for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. He's the host of the weekly radio program, Are We Alone? All right, Stanton, it is Bill's contention that, yes, people have sighted things, yes, there are reports, but we don't know there are unidentified flying objects from other planets.
Well, you know, I admire Bill's courage. I can't imagine a well-trained scientist who's expert at communicating science to the general masses of people, who has courage enough to go on a national, international television program to talk about something which he hasn't researched, something which he knows nothing about, and pretend he's being a scientist about it. Frankly, I'm sick and tired of the debunkers making their research be proclamations. I mean, Bill showed a document with, you know, names redacted. How about this is a CIA document it took me 5 years to get about UFOs, not just names redacted.
Right. Are you saying, Stanton, as a physicist, that there are unidentified flying objects that have come from other places?
Yes, I'm going beyond that. That's why the book is Flying Saucers and not UFOs. UFOs would be shilly-shally.
They'd be unidentified, yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying some of these...
What are you saying?
Some UFOs are intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft. We're dealing with a cosmic Watergate, meaning a cover-up by the government. Right. And there are no good arguments against those two, and we're dealing with the biggest story of the millennium.
Before I have Bill respond, let's have Dr. Shostak respond. Doctor, what do you know or not know?
Well, you know, Stanton likes to say those of us who are not doing the UFO research shouldn't opine about them. And I find that not such a convincing argument because, frankly, I don't do black hole research. I'm an astronomer. I don't do black hole research. But I can read a paper about black holes and decide whether it sounds credible or not. Is the guy who did it, is he credible? Was the paper reviewed? Are other scientists convinced? Can I repeat the experiment? There's no reason that Bill Nye nor I can't offer a serious opinion on this subject. So I regret that he said that. Secondly,
you're not offering a serious opinion.
Oh, don't interrupt, son. Okay. All right. Let's bring in James Fox. Do you know that you're not a scientist, but a filmmaker? Do you know that objects have come from other places, not the Earth?
Here's my theory. Okay, we've got two possibilities. Two possibilities. The observed phenomenon, by the way, I've got a little document here that was released through FOIA request. It's from the Air Material Command, General Nathan Twining, admitting on the 23rd of September, 1947, that the phenomenon is real and not visionary or fictitious.
What do you know?
So basically, there's an observed technology for at least 60 years that one can easily establish. The ability to hover without making sound, without disturbing the air, and accelerate from a standpoint to out of sight in the blink of an eye. So either there's an agency within some government in the world that's in possession of that technology and has kept it under wraps for 60 years. And I can definitively say that.
Government could be ours.
And it's a terrestrial explanation. There's a terrestrial explanation for that technology, or there isn't.
Or the government could be ours, too.
Or the government could be ours.
Which would explain its
Which would explain that they've kept this technology under wraps for 60 years or more.
Could you unequivocally, Bill, say that there are no objects coming from outer space? Can you say that?
Of course not. There are definitely objects coming from outer space. There's 100,000 tons of
alien
of dust that lands put a sheet out every night, you'll find dust.
Aliens.
No, I'm very skeptical. You know, as we say in science, the simplest explanation is generally the best one. So here's our problem, I think. People are confident that the United States government has covered things up.
Right.
And indeed, if you read recent publications, stuff declassified last year, and I didn't write the book, but if you read something like Legacy of Ashes about the CIA has covered up a lot of things. And a couple times they got their own forces shooting at themselves because one part of the organization didn't tell what the other part of the organization.
What's your point?
My point being that the U.S. government could have accidentally led people to believe that there was a lot more going on than there really was. And so this ability of the U.S. government to create these rumors, generally inadvertently, may I say, has led people to have confidence that when they can't explain something by traditional means, it must be some amazing, never before experienced
let me get a break. We'll come right
phenomenon.
back.
Okay.
Where are these so-called space aliens coming from? What do they want from us? We'll ask after the break. There's still time to participate in our quick vote. Is the United States government hiding knowledge of UFOs? Head to CNN.com/Larry King right now and weigh in. Right now, yes, by the way, is in the lead. Before we continue, let's take a look at a clip from James Fox's new movie. It involves a Japanese airliner. Watch.
I'm picking up a hit on the radar, approximately 5 miles inshore, your 6 o'clock position. Do you concur?
The CIA said to all the people there, this event never happened. Who are you going to believe? Your lying eyes or the government?
Why is the government covering up, Stanton? Why?
In my book, I have a whole chapter on 6 reasons for it. You want to figure out how they work. You worry about the other guy figuring out how they work before the before you do, because they make wonderful weapons delivery and defense systems. You don't want them to know, you know, they know kind of thing. If a big announcement were to be made, there would be, what? Church attendance would go up, mental hospital admissions would go up, the stock market would go down, but there'd be a big push for an earthling orientation. No government wants that. And fourth, some of the religious extremists.
Okay. Do you, Dr. Shostak, believe that? Do you think there'd be a panic?
Nope, absolutely not, Larry. Polls have shown since the 1960s that something like 50–60% of Americans believe that we are being visited by saucer-sailing aliens that occasionally abduct you for experiments that are inappropriate on a first date, and nobody's rioting in the streets about that. New York Times announced it tomorrow. I think people would say, well, I knew it all along.
Our latest Associated Press poll shows 14% of Americans claim they've seen a UFO, and 34% say they believe in UFOs. Now, James, tell us about, you have eyewitnesses you spoke to in Arizona, right?
I've had...
Who told you they saw? They saw what?
There's a craft, it's a boomerang-shaped craft. It's up to a mile across. It flew extremely slowly.
A mile across?
A mile across. It flew extremely slowly. People had it fly directly over. We're not talking about an ambiguous light off in the distance. Directly over their house, so low they think they could have hit it with a rock.
How many people told you they saw it?
There's been over 1,000 people who have come forward. I've talked to at least 150 from all over the state of Arizona.
All of them report the same thing.
Including the governor of Arizona, who launched an investigation with the Pentagon, local Air Force Base, Luke Air Force Base.
And what happened in the investigation?
They shrugged their shoulders, so we don't know what that thing was.
All right. How do you respond? They're not lying, James. Bill, what do you think?
My recollection of this was the Air Force said they had a flight of F-16s that dropped flares that night. And it's a big V.
But these people are describing.
That
was at 10 o'clock, not 8:30.
The real thing happened at 8:30. It started in the north and it headed all the way down.
So one explanation is
people couldn't tell time.
One explanation is that something happened in the evening and we have confused the time. Another explanation is there's an alien spacecraft.
Okay. So are you open to that possibility? As a skeptic,
not in the case of the one in Phoenix, no. Because at the time, in this case, no, look, I don't have the documents in front of me to be in all fairness.
You haven't studied the evidence is what it boils down to, Bill.
That's where I really disagree with you, Stan.
Well, hold on,
I've studied the evidence pretty well. I remember very well that night. Go ahead.
When this craft took off, and I talked to people across the state of Arizona, they said, had I blinked, I would have missed it. It didn't make any sound, it didn't disturb the air, it didn't make a sonic boom, and it was at least a mile across, including the governor of Arizona saw this thing.
And he's a pilot.
And he's a pilot, and he's a former captain in the Air Force.
Okay, but on CNN, we had footage of that.
No, there's been no footage of it.
There's
no footage of that.
Flare.
Of the 10 o'clock flares. There's been no footage. I'm about to uncover some footage.
Let me get a break. And why do we presume that aliens, if they're out there, are so much smarter than we? It's an interesting question. We'll try for an answer. Phone calls, too, after the break.
Another civilization?
I don't know what it is.
That was Quinn that put the...
You and I agree.
We're back. Okay, calm down. All right, Stanton, a good point from an avid listener. We've lived through many administrations of this. We've lived through Johnson, Nixon, right? A whole bunch. We've had Republicans, Democrats, scientists.
Indeed, we have.
Nobody, all of them are covering up. No official has ever said, I want to look into this.
Yes. As they say,
Jimmy Carter got Jimmy Carter on camera. I was the first person to get Jimmy Carter on camera saying that he tried to launch an investigation and he got nowhere. I got Gerald Ford as a phone interview.
How could a president get nowhere?
He got nowhere.
He doesn't have a need to know.
Bill Clinton tried to launch an investigation.
So the CIA is hiding all this from presidents?
We don't know if it's the CIA. We don't know. It's some sort of quasi-government, quasi-military.
Well, here's the thing. The CIA hides stuff from the president. But that doesn't mean that they're extraterrestrials.
Well, why on this topic? Now, why Stanton on this topic? Would there be a giant cover-up?
Because it affects everything we think about ourselves. And as I said, if we make a declaration that indeed aliens are visiting, people are going to want to push for an earthling orientation. We have 300 million people.
What orientation? Say it again.
A new identity, instead of as Americans, Chinese, Greek, Peruvian,
new
whatever.
Identity. Okay.
Okay, who speaks for the planet? We're going to hold an election, right? But the Chinese have 1.3 billion. India's got 1 billion. We have 300 million.
There's a conspiracy
We're not going to give up that They have a common goal, to stay in power.
So,
That's what government is all about, Larry. You know that.
Look at it on a smaller scale. Look at like what happened with Five Simonton. Five Simonton made a joke out of that sighting that happened in 1997. He had one of his aides dressed up in an alien suit. This massive craft flies over the state of Arizona. The governor said there was mounting pressure from his constituents to get to the bottom of it. There's growing hysteria. He holds a press conference. He has his aide dressed up in an alien suit, makes a joke out of the whole thing. And the reason why he did that, and he told us 10 years later, is because they didn't know what it was. And people were freaking out.
I have an email from Ann in Duncan, Oklahoma. UFO conspiracy theorists say the U.S. government is conspiring to keep extraterrestrial contacts a secret. Why wouldn't aliens themselves make their presence known to the world? If they can travel light years to get here, they don't need government permission for anything. Don't you think they would do that, Seth?
Yeah, oh, well, of course they would. Look, you just have to look at the historical analogs, Larry. 1492, Columbus lands in America. 10 years later, Spain is sending 25 ships filled with colonists to the Americas. Now, if you'd asked the North American natives 10 years after Columbus, do you think we're being invaded? It doesn't matter what their military wanted to do, what the chiefs wanted to do. They knew they were being invaded. It's been more than 60 years since Roswell, and as far as I can tell, my flights still take off on time from the local airport. Nobody influence from the aliens whatsoever.
Why don't they come, James?
Well, here's the thing. I
don't talk to the squirrels in my backyard,
I asked
Larry.
this exact question to Edgar Mitchell, who's Apollo 14 astronaut, sixth man on the moon. I said, why won't they just land? He said, and he really looked at me and he said, well, think about it, James. Don't you think they'd want to, if you went to a distant world, don't you think you'd want to kind of just sit back and observe a little bit? I'm not saying that's the case.
Why do they observe Wyoming and not Washington?
I'm just asking.
They do observe Washington.
Washington was buzzed in 1952. It was captured on radar, photographic evidence.
See, that's your
scrambled
claim.
military. That's not a claim.
So
that's
what
a
do
fact.
you do? What do I do?
That's a fact.
Okay, what do I do as a civilian when the U.S. Air Force says, well, that was some flight testing we were doing and we covered it up? What do you do when they declassify all these documents?
Are they hiding this technology for 60 years?
Maybe
they are. But if they are hiding this technology, they shouldn't, because someone's in possession of technology that could really be beneficial to all of humanity. Because it's not jet age.
Exactly. Yes. So why would they? Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they're not. Maybe it is alien visitation. I don't know. I can't prove that.
So you know,
but I can't tell you why they cover up.
But you think aliens have visited here?
No question about it. It's not. The evidence is so powerful, and I wish that Seth, who, when he attended my lecture, admitted he hadn't read any of the 5 large-scale scientific studies.
What do they want, the aliens? You think? What do they want?
I got a whole long list. The bottom line is they're here to quarantine us.
Quarantine us?
Hey, we're a primitive society whose major activity is tribal warfare. I worked on fusion propulsion systems. Everybody in the neighborhood is going to know about fusion. That's what makes the stars work. Within a short time, we'll be able to take our brand of friendship, which everybody else calls hostility, out there. Remember, this is a planet that killed 50 million of our own kind.
So you're saying the aliens are afraid that we will take over their technology?
Didn't say
you know what?
that.
This is all speculation right now, guys. Why don't we start talking about the facts?
Okay, that's where we disagree, is on the facts.
Well, disagree on the facts.
Have you looked at Blue Book Special Report 14, the biggest study ever done?
We have government documents basically stating that these things exist. It's like...
Well, so you guys, have you been to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base?
Of course I have.
So you can go. If you've been there, Larry, it's cool.
All kinds of areas you can't get into, Bill.
Everyone always talks about...
Yeah.
I had a clearance.
They don't show you an alien, do they?
No, just that when you I had security clearance for a while. Okay.
What would you do if you saw one of these things?
Oh, I would first of all, I would take a picture of it.
Okay, then what?
A good one.
Then what? Then what? Then what?
Then I would look at the picture carefully.
And then you'd laugh at yourself because no one would believe you.
Let me get a break. We'll be right back.
Okay, you guys.
We'll be right back.
It's quite a step.
It's true. No one will believe you.
We'll be right back. Is that a cow? We're back. I'm trying to figure out, is that a cow?
Those are cows watching UFOs.
Stanton Einstein's theory of relativity. You can't travel faster than light, right?
Yeah, but as you get close to the speed of light, time slows down. So you can go 39 light years in 6 months pilot time if you're at 99.99% of the speed of light. And we physicists make particles that go 99.999%.
Yeah, but they become infinitely massive. And
what about bending, warping, folding the
space-time
fabric? Brian
no,
Greene says
exactly. That's much better. You guys, no, but here's what I'm saying. That's a much better explanation that we don't know enough about physics.
Point B,
I love
fold
that.
the space-time fabric between 2 points.
But Stan, you made a point before break that the U.S. Air Force will not let you see everything. I should hope not. I hope the U.S. Air Force has a few things up their sleeve.
I had 14 years under security.
But that doesn't mean that the stuff that you can't see at, for example, the Wright-Patterson Air Force Museum.
Let me get a call in.
Let's get a call in.
New Orleans, hello.
Hi there, how you doing?
Hi.
I would like to know, how often are eyewitnesses given a polygraph to prove that they're telling the truth rather than making up a story just to be on TV?
Are they, James?
It's happened.
Sorry. Are they giving polygraphs?
It has happened. Betty Hill passed one on national television.
Absolutely.
Seth, do you think...
If you want to pass a polygraph
Can I
test,
say
you
one
guys
thing about
squeeze your toes.
Seth, you're a skeptic. You think we'll ever know the whole story? Oh, well, we never know the whole story. Seth?
I probably can't hear us.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't hear my name. Look, I think the whole story, you know what the bottom line is, Larry, is this. Stanton has some insight into alien sociology. He knows what they want. He has failed to convince the scientists of the world. And when he does that, you'll have real investigation into this, and it'll move from the area of fantasy to real science. I'm waiting for that to happen.
It's SETI that's the fantasy.
He can't convince them.
Okay, well, here's the problem. I just got back from meeting with the French CNS. It's the French equivalent of NASA. And France has, I don't know if people know this, but France just released their UFO files, which basically confirms that UFOs are real. And there's
They say that.
Yes.
France has announced that
CNES,
UFOs are real.
it's the head of CNES, just released 50 years of UFO files. And I went to interview the guy, Jacques Patnay, just recently, and I said to him, wow, this is amazing discovery. How are the French, reacting to this? He said, no one's jumping out of windows.
By the way, not only is no one jumping out of windows, it ain't a story.
England it did get covered a little bit, not a whole lot, but a little bit. Why
not?
England, I don't know. England followed suit.
There's a lot of things.
You guys had a little show about it. England followed suit and released their documents. So I asked him, I said, what would you like to say to the American government? And he said, don't be afraid to tell the people the truth.
Exactly. So you see stuff in the sky that you don't know what it is. That doesn't mean that they're aliens.
60 years of technology with no wings,
but
no
if
tail.
France announces, Bill, that they're there, why doesn't that impress you?
Okay, what's there mean?
50 years of scientific study. That's what it is. It is. It's been soil sample analysis, photographic analysis.
When I was young, you couldn't make an airplane without a vertical tail. Now you can. Well, that doesn't mean that they're aliens.
These things have been seen in our eyes for 60... I'm not saying they're aliens. I'm saying they are disc-shaped
phenomena that we don't...
Physical phenomena that defy physics as we understand it today, and it can be easily demonstrated for the last 60 years.
Do they defy physics?
No, it means we don't know how to duplicate it yet. Oh. That doesn't mean that it's impossible.
I didn't say
it means, look, I worked on fusion propulsion systems. That's what goes on in the sun. A lot of energy per pound of material. Back in 40 years ago, Larry, we haven't built a big system yet because it takes a lot of money and effort. When I was working on a nuclear airplane...
Guys, we're out of time. Thanks.
All right.
Another in our series of programs,
skeptical.
Searching for an Answer. Go to CNN.com/Larry King for transcripts, ringtones, photo galleries, and more. Don't forget about tonight's vote. Is the United States government hiding knowledge of UFOs? And we've got a UFO commentary from the former Arizona governor. Our latest podcast, Barack Obama.
Debate, presidential candidate Dennis Kucinich said he'd seen one, so has Jimmy Carter. So did a pilot who traveled from Iran to Washington so he could speak out today about his encounter with the UFO. Now, unidentified flying object means just that, unidentified. It says nothing about what or from where. But for years now, polling has shown that a majority of Americans believe the government, our government, simply isn't telling all it knows about those lights in the sky, whatever they are. Well, tonight, CNN's Gary Tuchman investigates.
If you flew on Air France from Nice to London on January 28, 1994, your captain says he saw a UFO 1,000 feet long just outside your window.
It seemed to be a huge flying disc.
The now retired pilot is one of 14 men, mainly former government and military officials from 7 different countries, talking about their UFO experiences.
It disappeared in about 10 to 20 seconds.
This conference took place in Washington, and the cast of characters was almost strangely, well, conventional. One of the believers, former governor of Arizona, Fife Symington.
I saw something that defied logic and challenged my reality.
During a visit to Phoenix, Symington described to me what he saw.
If you had been here 10 years ago and standing out here and looking up there at the lights and the view, you would have been astounded. You would have been amazed.
The so-called Phoenix lights were seen by many people in 1997. Skeptics say they were military aircraft or flares, but not the former governor.
It was probably some form of an alien spacecraft.
Lots of agreement on this panel. This retired Iranian Air Force pilot said he saw a UFO while flying.
It looked similar to a star, but bigger and brighter.
General Parviz Jafari says he tried to fire a missile, but much of his plane became inoperative.
All the instrument was fluctuating, the radio had garbled, even I couldn't have communication with my pilot in my back seat with operating the radio.
So none of your equipment worked, your missiles didn't work. Do you think it's because this was an alien from another world? You're sure of that?
Yeah, I'm sure.
This retired U.S. Air Force sergeant stationed in England said he walked up to a UFO that landed in a forest.
It maneuvered through the trees and shot off at an unbelievable rate of speed.
A man running for president just said he saw a UFO.
I did, and the rest of the account, it was unidentified flying object.
And so did a man who was president.
I and about 25 others saw something in the air that changed colors and was round and came.
Although Jimmy Carter says he doesn't think it was from another planet, most of these people differ on that point and want the FAA to investigate all these claims. But the FAA says that's not its job. We manage the aircraft that we're talking to. UFOs are called UFOs because they're unidentified, and we're not talking to them. And it's precisely because no one's talking that everybody here is trying harder to make them believe. Gary Tuchman, CNN, Washington.
Well, we're going to talk with the man who organized the conference. Coming up next, he also made a film investigating 50 years of what he calls official contradictions and denials. We'll also hear from a noted astronomer and UFO skeptic. We'll be right back. We like to present you with facts and information from different angles and let you make up your own minds about things. That's particularly true with mysteries. And for many Americans, there's no mystery greater than UFOs. James Fox helped organize today's UFO-related event in Washington. He directed the film Out of the Blue. He joins me now, along with astronomer, former Air Force pilot and skeptic, James McGahey. Thanks for being with us, both of you. Let me start off with you, James Fox. You helped organize the panel. Why? What are you hoping to accomplish?
We want to establish the fact that the phenomenon is real and it's taking place worldwide. And the reason why we got a panel of 14 high-ranking military and government officials from 7 countries who these guys officially investigated these cases for their governments and military. So it's not like private investigators. These are official military and government people.
But James Fox, to those who say, look, there's no actual evidence, I mean, there's no recovered spacecraft, there's no actual evidence, what do you say?
I say, well, we got photographic, radar confirmation, visual confirmation, landing trace cases. There were imprints in the ground where these things were reportedly landed. You know, and these government and military officials are telling us these things are real. I think we should listen.
James McGahey, I know you're skeptical. Why?
Well, UFOs are basically a modern space-age mythology. It's a conspiracy wrapped in superstition and myth and magic. People see lights in the sky and somehow they equate those lights in the sky to spacecraft from another world. It's really wish fulfillment. It's almost a fairy tale among many people to believe that somehow either doom or salvation is coming from the sky. It's a very old concept in human thinking. But I should say, when we talk about pilots, there's this incredible misidentification idea about pilots being trained observers. Pilots are not trained observers. They're trained to fly airplanes. They are some of the worst people at identifying objects in the sky than aren't other airplanes. They're trained to react quickly in an airplane, which very often makes them react to wrong stimuli.
James Fox, what about that?
Okay, let me say something. Mr. McGaha, although I do respect your opinion on this, you keep misleading the public when you say that these are ambiguous distant lights off at a distance. These are not. These are unambiguous, up-close and personal cases where, in one case in Bentwaters in 1980, they actually touched the UFO on the ground. And this was witnessed by 80 people.
I am quite skeptical that anyone touched anything at Bentwaters.
Well,
and it wasn't at Bentwaters, it was actually at Woodbridge.
With all due respect, sir, I don't think you were there.
James McGaha, why shouldn't there be more investigation? Why should what this panel is calling for essentially is some sort of government investigation of it? Why shouldn't there be further investigation?
Well, there have been investigations, and it was. Well, hang on a second. Let me just state this clearly. One of the things that you keep interrupting me, sir. Please. One of the things I want to mention very quickly is that the official position from the Air Force is that they terminated Project Blue Book in 1969, and there have been no official investigations since then. However, we found evidence to suggest the contrary. On a number of cases in Tehran, the general said the Americans were making discrete inquiries about the case there, as well as Bentwaters, England. The colonel said that the OSI came in and investigated that case.
So you believe there is a government investigation going on, you just want it more public?
They're making discrete inquiries, unofficially, yes.
James McGaha, final thought.
Yes, they are making discrete inquiries about strange things that happen, not about UFOs or alien spacecraft. That's not what's going on at all.
They're responsible for the security and deployment of nuclear weapons. If you think they're out there hallucinating, why do they all get promoted?
Well,
we're gonna have to leave it there.
If we had time, I could actually tell you what happened that night. It's very prosaic, involving lights in the sky, and that's all.
It's not lights in the sky, sir. Thank you.
No doubt a debate we're not going to settle tonight, but we do appreciate you guys talking about it. James Fox, James McGaha. Thank you.
Now, here's the big story we should have led with.
Exactly right. At the National Press Club today, there's going to be a number of retired Air Force personnel who are going to say that they have witnessed with their own two eyes UFOs, unidentified flying somethings, over America's nuclear sites when they were posted there. And they did something, and they can't explain what, to the missile systems down below.
Yeah, so you're going to have 6 retired members of the military now at the National Press Club in D.C. They're going to say these incidents go back to 1967, 1980. Now, they don't have any recent episodes. That could be because these gentlemen have all been retired for some time, so they haven't been in the loop. But they all say the same thing, that when they noticed these situations happening, they were all told, you cannot say anything about this. But here's my question, guys. Why would aliens only be interested in our nuclear facilities?
Because they know...
energy?
Yeah, they could be energy, or they might be saying, wow, this country over here looks really cool, and they seem to have the weapons, let's check it out. Let's say they were even more sophisticated than us, even more sophisticated than a Henry Kissinger.
Sure.
And let's say they actually shot beams of light. In 1980, evidently, they were saying they shot beams of light in an air base in England, where the RAF, and we have... a joint base. And they also saw a disc-like object flying around. They also parlay that into a book called UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials that cite 120 retired and current officers who have had encounters with UFOs.
Sure. And if somebody ever steps off a UFO, or something, who would they... when they say, take me to your leader, who would that be? Would it be Barack Obama, the President of the United States? No. It would be somebody who has just been appointed to a post at the United Nations, Her name, Masla Othman, will head up the Office for Outer Space Affairs. There she is.
She's a physicist.
You're serious, right? We're now going to have, okay.
Yeah.
They spotted a bunch of galaxies far away, and they believe it's revolving around the sun. Looks a lot like us. So they thought to themselves, sooner or later they're going to come over here. We need someone. We don't want any confusion about who should represent us. So we've chosen this Malaysian.
Take them to her office.
Right. Evidently, she knows a lot of languages and focuses on physics. Personally, I think we should get a vote in this. I think we should get somebody with a little bit of an attitude, maybe a Bobby Knight or a Rex Ryan, to kind of scare away other potential life forms.
Richard Dreyfuss was great in that movie.
He'd be
Close
excellent.
Encounters. Yeah, if he's available.
And a very good debater.
Sure. Okay.
Right.
Coming up today at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., there's going to be an amazing announcement by 6 retired military personnel. What are they going to talk about? No, not military strategies about war. They say that they're going to confirm that they have seen UFOs throughout their careers, dating all the way back to 1967, and that they believe that these UFO craft, and whomever's inside of them, was tampering with nuclear sites that we have across the United States of America. There are 6 retired military personnel who are going to stand up there and say, we were told never to talk about this, but now we are.
And in fact, a couple of them have written some books and stuff like that. And we were reading, in the stuff we've seen so far about the testimony they've given and stories they've told, there's this one guy who said that he was in a bunker at, I think, a Minuteman site, and apparently some 30 to 50 foot wide disc was above one of these nuke missile sites, and you know they were given the order, hey, protect, protect, and so suddenly the bells are ringing and stuff like that. And for some reason, the missile started malfunctioning. It never went off, obviously, but they think that for some reason these discs from wherever have been tampering with our nukes.
Dwayne Aronson, Bruce Fenstermacher, Robert Jamerson, Patrick McDonough, Jerry Nelson, Bob Salas, all officers, all are saying the same story about different incidents. Some served at different times. So there's a book out that has over 100 officers who claim the same thing. So this intelligence life, if this is indeed the case, and if there is the case, we'll lead with it tomorrow. They have identified us as the place to be, which is good for us.
Well, the United Nations knows that they're going to be doing this press conference today because now they're going to appoint a Earth contact ambassador for those aliens. Her name is Masla Othman, and she's going to be known as the leader of the Office for Outer Space Affairs.
This is great.
Seriously, UNUSA. This woman is now saying, look, we should be prepared for any of these encounters, and so now the United Nations is going to be funding this.
I'm, you know, if I, for one, just hope whoever encounters us friendly. Just wants to talk. But Masla is the perfect person for this because she's a scientist. She's from Malaysia. Right. And she's not somebody who's going to put their personality first. Sure. She's going to go into the background and just speak for Earth in general. You're right. And when people, oftentimes aliens, what's the first thing they'll say? Take me to your leader. Right. At least we could go, Masla, they're asking for you. Sure. Ring her bell, and even in the middle of the night, she's told to pick up.
But what
if you, the ambassador?
I would like to represent Masla to another from another planet. Not a bad idea. I like to represent the Earth.
What if a spacecraft from another entity came here looking for intelligent life? Right. What if they accidentally went to Washington, D.C.?
That would be a shame. Because they'd have to keep...
They'd never be able to land because there's a lot of hot air around there.
Absolutely.
Coming up on our...
We turn to the topic of UFOs. The prompter said pause for music, which I did, and it actually worked pretty well. Spooky science fiction, government cover-up, or both. Our next guest calling for a formal investigation of unidentified flying objects. Leslie Kean, a journalist and author of the new book, UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. There's the book. You just saw Leslie. Let's have at it. We discussed the book, as you probably know, yesterday on the show. Benefit all of us briefly with the basic premise of your book. The most valid observations you feel like you have for the existence of UFOs?
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, what the book does is it brings forward people from very high levels around the world, military people, generals, officials who have been head of government agencies that have investigated UFOs, and pilots who have encountered them. So it's kind of a grouping of these very high-level people that are bringing forth data, their own testimonies about what has happened, results of decades of research, government documents, physical evidence, all of them together. So, you know, when you read the cases, and the other important thing is that they have written their own pieces for this book. I'm not just quoting them and telling you what they say. Half the book is actually a compilation of pieces written by these individuals in their own words.
The professor who was with us yesterday was basically saying that you can rule out 95% of UFOs. It's the 5% that you can't rule out that you have to deal with.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's your premise.
Absolutely. I would agree with them 100%. And that the cases that are represented in the book are among that 5%. And what that 5% is it's sightings for which there is enough evidence that we can eliminate all options for explaining it. And cases that have been officially investigated, you know, that they're investigated enough so that we know there's no explanation for them.
So let me talk about a couple of we ran some of this through some of this various skeptics of which you know there's no shortage in general. One of the issues that people have brought up as it pertains to the book is that pilots are not reliable sources. That pilots, by definition, are skewed towards better safe than sorry when they see something, whether it's dangerous or not, whether it's foreign or not, that their tendency, because it's rational on their part, is to basically observe whatever the aberration is and then split because they're flying an airplane and there's no reason to stick around and find out. But it doesn't mean that what they think they saw is what they saw.
I would disagree with that, and I've spoken to aviation experts, one of them who has written an extensive chapter in the book about aviation safety issues in UFOs, a lot of people believe that pilots are, in fact, our best trained observers. They're trained to recognize everything in the sky because the safety of their passengers is at stake. And they know what aircraft look like, what military aircraft look like, what bizarre weather phenomenon look like. I mean, they're trained. So I would have to disagree that they're not good observers.
And what about the argument that unexplained or unidentified, and if you can confirm it's unidentified, doesn't necessarily mean that it is foreign or that it is from another galaxy?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, nobody in this book who has, or the people that have witnessed these things, are claiming that these are from another galaxy, that they're extraterrestrial. The premise of the book is that there is a phenomenon there, but we do not know what it is.
And what is the phenomenon that you assert is there?
Well, it appears to be some kind of technological craft, objects that are flying around that demonstrate all kinds of capabilities that we don't have here, such as being able to hover and then zoom off at the blink of an eye. I mean, they're demonstrating physics that we cannot explain according to our own technological capabilities. And this is seen over and over again. These are what these people are documenting. And they do show up on radar. They leave marks on the ground. I mean, there's enough physical evidence of their presence that without a doubt there is something there. That's the point. What it is the question. It has not been explained yet.
Well, what is it?
What we want to have happen now is for a proper scientific investigation to be done, to find out. I mean, everybody wants to know.
You're pretty...
A lot of people want to know.
Not everybody. I mean, some people might not want to know.
What I meant was a lot of people. A lot of people.
Fair enough. Because there may be some people, they may not care.
Well, that's
they might just want to get a hot dog.
A lot of people don't care. A lot of people do care, especially the ones that have seen them and want answers. I mean, some of these people who see them, it changes your life.
How does it change your life?
Because you are seeing something so phenomenal that is not supposed to exist, that everybody around you says can't possibly be. You get ridiculed, people don't believe you, but you have seen it with your own eyes. And the governor of Arizona was one of these people, the former governor of Arizona, who has written from my book. He saw this thing in 1997 that hundreds, probably thousands of people saw in his own state, and he didn't even admit it until 10 years later. But it changed his life.
You're rough on the skeptics in your book. You say non-believers are dishonest, irrational, fear and ignorance. Can't skeptics ultimately, in the scientific process, don't you want to be skeptical in the scientific process? Isn't the root, the soul, the process, skepticism?
Actually, the introduction to my book, I say we want skepticism. You have to define what skepticism really means. And what I think what you're talking about there is actually the people that we call debunkers, who are people that are just on a mission to prove, you know, they'll say anything to get across the point that UFOs don't exist, because they can't exist. It's they can't exist, so they don't exist. And these are the people that have not studied the data, don't read about it, can't talk about specific cases, and will just give you irrational explanations like the planet Venus for something, when planet Venus isn't even in the sky that night. That's happened. So there's a difference between a skeptic and a bunker. Skeptics, we welcome. We're all skeptics. We don't know what these things are.
Skeptics, yes. Debunkers, no.
To be simple about it, yeah. But I mean, we separate in the book what the difference is between those two.
Do you think if aliens exist, they would bring capital that could flow into America to create jobs?
I think that if we discovered that we were being visited by extraterrestrials, which is a possibility given the data, it would change a lot of things, and it would have a lot of repercussions.
You think we'd have jobs?
Can't talk about jobs.
It's a pleasure.
But something bigger than that.
Bigger than jobs.
More important.
Here, a pleasure
the way
to meet
we
you.
see ourselves.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
A lot,
Leslie Kean, author of UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record, could change the way we see ourselves, and it might create a job or two. You could be an alien watcher. You could work at the alien port, unloading alien baggage. Maybe.
Aliens may be a serious problem on our southern border and on the northern border. But what about the aliens who may be crossing another border? Oh yes, the border above. That's right, we're talking about outer space, aliens, extraterrestrials, LaToya Jackson, you know, they're here, they're among us. More and more people believe that space aliens may be coming. Now, listen to this story, because this is an actual news story. This isn't like out of the Weekly World News. Chicago O'Hare's airport recently, the United Airlines employees claim they observed a flying saucer-like object hovering low over the terminal for several minutes before bolting through the thick clouds with such ferocity that it actually left like a creepy hole in the cloudy skies overhead. So what was it? A hoax? An alien attack? Were they observing us? Is this a military operation? What is it? Joining us now is UFO historian Richard Dolan and the guy who actually broke the story. His name is John Hilkovich. He is from Chicago and just...
Possible motive in the brutal killing is tied to a Las Vegas strip club.
He's the Las Vegas man who claims he can summon UFOs on command. Pretty wild. So we sent Action News reporter Mike Dell'Ostrito to get the real story. But what he found shocked everyone and could leave you wondering, are UFOs real?
Breaking news, solving problems. This is Channel 13 Action News, live at 11.
Well, let's take another trip back into the realm of paranormal tonight. Last night we had ghost hunters, now UFOs.
That's right, and there is a Las Vegas guy making an extraordinary claim about extraterrestrials. So we sent Action News reporter Mike Dell'Ostrito to check it out. Mike?
All right, guys, just listen up here. This guy says the Old Testament, written in Hebrew, taught him how to summon UFOs. All right, he says he can also do this on command, and he adds he's been doing it for 25 years, keeping all of it secret until now.
These beings are here. They are here. They're just sitting right up there.
We met up with Prophet Yahweh, seer of Yahweh, at Doolittle Park off Lake Mead. We picked the day, we picked the time, and we picked the location.
Everyone's going to think you're absolutely nuts. Well, I thought I was absolutely nuts.
Until he says he saw UFOs. Over the years, 1,500 of them.
Can we make it 1,501 today? What do you think? I'll try it.
He says the voice in his head told him to go public now. So we took him up on his offer, and we scanned the skies. Nothing but a few clouds. When the prophet started praying for a sighting, I wasn't exactly convinced.
I pray, oh Yahweh, that you send a sighting so that they know that I am not mentally ill. I am not a false prophet, like those who seek to kill me say I am.
I see something straight up.
Oh, brother, look at it. There it is.
You can barely see it, a white speck. Then another sighting.
There it is. I got it. I got it. I got it. I got it.
Photojournalist Jonathan Hawkins locks in on it. Let's take a cleaser look here. It's an orange sphere that appeared out of nowhere. I call the boss with an unexpected change in my story. I can see it clear as day. In fact, it's bright.
I can't believe this.
It's moving pretty fast.
It's going to Nellis Air Force Base. It wants to be seen.
We called Nellis to see what these things might be. Guess what? They didn't call us back. But this thing started coming back toward us.
It's coming toward us now, I think.
Chicago Tribune. John, let me start with you. The UFO witnesses in Chicago, they're not nuts, are they? They are like really fine, upstanding people.
And they're very serious about this. They're all United Airlines employees, ranging from pilots to supervisors who heard chatter about this on the radio and raced out and saw it in the sky, aircraft mechanics, veterans of O'Hare who've been there for a long time, know how the lights can play tricks in the sky, and they say this wasn't that. This was a real metallic gray object low in the sky, and they want answers.
Okay, do you believe them? Do you believe them that they believe it, or do you believe that they really saw what they think they saw?
I believe that what they're reporting and is real, and they were concerned about safety. They're not necessarily saying that this is a craft from another galaxy, but they're saying this is a unidentified flying object low in the sky over the world's second busiest airport. It could pose a collision risk. Who knows, a security risk in this era post 9/11.
Okay, well,
and
No, let me go to Richard here. I'm sorry to interrupt, but let me go to Richard for just a second and ask you, because isn't this the same kind of thing that when we had the new stealth fighters out, everybody was saying, it's an alien spacecraft. No, it's just a secret military aircraft that we hadn't announced for years in advance. Is there a possibility that you think that this is just some sort of military aircraft that we haven't released, that we have?
Sure, anything's possible, Glenn, but if you want to go that route, then I think what you need to do, to be honest about it, is go back through the decades and indeed generations of reports that we've collected of these types of objects that people have been seeing. And let me just add that this is a phenomenon that not simply civilian people have been dealing with, but U.S. military personnel have been encountering what appear to be UFOs. I don't know what else you would call them, objects that military pilots have frequently said are disc-shaped, that look exotic, that behave in unusual ways, and that have violated sensitive airspace time and again for many, many years. So if this is a secret covert project, as many people have speculated, it seems to be going on in a rather confrontational, provocative way. And that really doesn't have any explanation.
All right, so John, you think that this is, there was some sort of a cover-up. At least the FAA was not real honest with you when you first asked, right?
Well, yeah, I went to the FAA and they said they have no reports of this at all. I put them a Freedom of Information Act request, and then they got back to me several days later saying that in reviewing the communication tapes at O'Hare, they did come across chatter involving this object, and that a United supervisor contacted the FAA manager in the tower and asked if the controllers had seen anything unusual. Also, United Airlines told me that they had no reports of this, even though the fact is that they were interviewing up to a dozen employees who reported observing this, asking them to write reports, draw pictures. After my story broke on Monday, United said, well, yes, we have been talking to these employees.
Okay, so Richard, why would United, why would the give me an explanation of why these guys would be hiding this stuff?
Well, I mean, one reason just might be that they're embarrassed to come out and say that, oh, yeah, you know, we've got this UFO hanging out over O'Hare and we don't know what to do about it. Let's face it, if you're running a large corporation or a bureaucracy, the last thing you want to do is stick your neck out on an issue like this. And so it doesn't surprise me at all. And in fact, this is, again, part of a long history. FAA as well has not always been forthcoming over many, many alleged cases. Witnesses have seen these very bizarre things for years and years, and it's very tough to get a straight answer out of a lot of government agencies or other corporate bodies.
All right, but then, John, let me go back to you and ask, I mean, geez, I saw Saddam Hussein hung with a cell phone camera. How come there's no pictures? Are there pictures? Is there video? Is there anything? Here it is over Chicago and O'Hare Airport. How come we don't see any visuals?
Well, pictures haven't emerged yet, but I'm told that the flight crew that was being pushed back, one of the pilots did open the windscreen, look out, did identify this object, and he had a digital camera. He may have taken some pictures. We're also hearing other reports that there may be photographs from camera phones and such, that United Airlines may be aware of this, and I'm working, believe me, to find these witnesses.
Okay, if anybody has information on those witnesses, how do they get a hold of you?
Jay Hilkovich at ChicagoTribune.com.
Yeah, I mean, if you got pictures, man, send them in, because I'd like to see them too. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah,
appreciate it. Now, let's check in with Nancy.
What? See, it's coming up toward us. Whoa, man! Oh, hallelujah!
Then, a few seconds later, it disappeared.
It's going back up in space.
Prophet Yahweh isn't concerned. He says it'll be back.
And I'm still not quite sure what those things were. Now, if I didn't see this for myself, I probably would have just laughed this whole thing off. Prophet Yahweh says, though, this is just the beginning. He says we're going to see a lot more of these things starting next week. And he says one will come down low enough for all of Las Vegas to see. Mike Dell'Ostrito, Channel 13 Action News.
Interesting. You know what? If anybody knows what that was, please call Mike Dell'Ostrito and identify that object.
So, Jerry, do you mind if we play the X-Files theme song while you do what?
Yeah, really.
I think I can handle it.
Yeah.
No comment on that. Let's, from a scientific point of view, let's go right to early warning desert Doppler. And, you know, that's not the best for picking up UFOs, but I'll tell you, it's pretty good for thunderstorms, all kinds of wacky convective activities.
UFOs shut down our government's defense systems. There is evidence that something caused missiles to malfunction during test launches. Former Air Force officers tell their incredible story about the film that was confiscated by the CIA. What was on it? And why don't officials want us to see it? Find out right now on Larry King Live. Good evening. We begin with shocking allegations that UFOs have interfered with missiles at U.S. Air Force bases, and aliens are monitoring nuclear warheads and bombs. Our first guests claim UFOs have activated missile systems at 5 Air Force bases